Imagine your flight is just about to land, and the plane loses its GPS connection. It basically drops off the map. That's what happened to the passengers of 2 flights from Finland to Estonia in April 2024. Both planes had to turn back. The reason? GPS jamming. Signals that block or disrupt satellite navigation. Jamming is affecting planes and ships across the Baltic Sea, and it's getting worse. European countries say it's part of a campaign to destabilize the West, and they're pointing to this little bit of Russia, Kaliningrad.
Kaliningrad, наш форпост на западе.
It's an outpost with a dramatic past, and now it's stuffed with Russian military equipment and armed with nuclear-capable weapons.
A dagger, Russian dagger, pointed against Europe.
Could this be a future flashpoint? And why is this even Russia? On Russian state TV, this has become almost a staple.
В радиоактивный пепел.
Threats of nuclear war against the West.
На Западе все чаще задаются вопросом, применит ли Россия ядерное оружие? Ответ – да.
And Kaliningrad is often at the center of Russia's saber-rattling. In this talk show, guests are discussing nuclear missile flight times to various Western capitals from Kaliningrad, all theoretical for now. But Kaliningrad already is a nuclear threat. Russia has deployed the nuclear-capable Iskander missile in the exclave. This is their estimated strike range.
And there is no other way how you can effectively, easily deliver the precision strike, but from Kaliningrad.
This is Sergei Sukhankin. He's a senior fellow at the Saratoga Foundation, a US-based nonprofit organization specializing on the war in Ukraine. He's a Russia expert with a focus on the Baltic Sea and Kaliningrad. He was also born in the exclave.
Kaliningrad is not just sandwiched between 2 European, 2 NATO countries, but also Kaliningrad could be viewed as a kind of a dagger, Russian dagger, pointed against Europe.
The Kaliningrad region is tiny. It's the most western part of Russia, without a land connection to the rest of the country, an exclave. Its capital is also called Kaliningrad. Today, around 1 million people live in the Russian region. Kaliningrad is home to the Russian Navy's Baltic Fleet, Russia's oldest. The Baltic Fleet is headquartered here, in Baltisk. You can see some of its ships on satellite images. The port doesn't freeze over in the winter, so it's accessible all year.
Калининград, безусловно, один из важнейших регионов России, наш форпост на западе.
Kaliningrad was a Soviet military bastion. It was one of the most militarized spots in the world. And today it is regaining its status of the Russian bastion.
Russia certainly isn't going around saying exactly what it has stationed in the strategically important region. But Russia does have significant air defense capabilities in Kaliningrad, like the S-400 system. You can see some of the major military installations in the Kaliningrad region in this satellite imagery. This is where some experts say nuclear warheads could be stored. You've already seen the port of Baltisk, and there are 2 military airfields. This is one of them, Chernyakhovsk Air Base in 2022. At the time, some of Russia's advanced warplanes were deployed to Kaliningrad. Here, their pilots are getting a warm welcome. So how did this tiny bit of land become a Russian military stronghold in the first place? To understand, let's start with the Brandenburg Gate. No, not that Brandenburg Gate. Not the one in Berlin. The one in Kaliningrad, in Russia. The shared German name is no coincidence. Take a look at this old map of Europe before the Second World War. This piece of land was already an exclave, but it was East Prussia. And Königsberg, a German city, was its capital. For hundreds of years, the region was German-speaking, which is why you can still find stuff with German names there, like the Brandenburg Gate. Königsberg was an important cultural and administrative center in the German Empire. And then, part of Nazi Germany. World War II changed everything in Europe. At the end of the war, the Allies who had defeated Nazi Germany decided Europe's fate. They basically divided Europe and Germany. A part of East Prussia, including Königsberg, went to the Soviet Union. Königsberg was destroyed and then taken over by Soviet troops. Much of the German population fled during the war, and the Soviet Union expelled those who remained. Königsberg was renamed Kaliningrad in memory of leading Soviet official Mikhail Kalinin, and the new Soviet region got the same name. People from different parts of the Soviet Union were brought in to repopulate the area.
They started basically building a new type of society in Kaliningrad, trying to erase the previous cultural landscape.
Built from the ground up, Kaliningrad became a military outpost and home to the Baltic Fleet. Throughout the Cold War, Kaliningrad was surrounded by communist allies. The Baltic states to the north had been annexed by the Soviet Union. And Poland in the south was also under Soviet control. And for decades, they were part of the Warsaw Pact, a Soviet-led military alliance formed to counter the Western military alliance, NATO. But then Europe changed again. The Soviet Union collapsed. Kaliningrad became part of the new Russia. First, it looked like Kaliningrad was going to have friendly relations with the rest of Europe, just like Russia. This is the city of Kaliningrad's 750th anniversary celebration. Russia's President Vladimir Putin invited the leaders of Germany and France. But Kaliningrad's neighbors, Poland and Lithuania, weren't invited. They had joined NATO, putting the Western alliance on Russia's borders. Soon after, Putin prominently presented a Russian narrative we still hear today.
Думаю, очевидно, процесс натовского расширения – это серьезно провоцирующий фактор, снижающий уровень взаимного доверия. И у нас есть справедливое право откровенно спросить, против кого это расширение.
For Kaliningrad, that meant it went from this to this with NATO's eastern expansion. As we heard in the Russian narrative, Kaliningrad is surrounded, but its neighbors consider that little bit of Russia a big threat. To understand why, let's look at this bit of land. Looks peaceful. But this area between Lithuania and Poland is seen as NATO's Achilles heel, its weakest point. This is the Suwalki Gap. Here's the deal. Remember, Lithuania and Poland are both NATO members. This is Belarus, Russia's closest ally. And here's Kaliningrad. The NATO concern is that in case of a conflict, Russia could close the Suwalki Gap and cut off the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia from the rest of the bloc.
The Suwalki Gap is incredibly important for both sides.
This is Stefan Hedlund. He's an emeritus professor at Sweden's Uppsala University. He's published over 24 books on Russia. We'll be talking about Russia-NATO relations with him.
Kaliningrad is a huge vulnerability for Russia, but it's also huge assets because, I mean, from Kaliningrad, you can, if you close the Suwalki Gap, then NATO will not be able to reinforce.
Russia regularly carries out military exercises with its ally Belarus nearby. And NATO has also been flexing its military muscles with drills. And beefed up its presence with battle groups in Poland and each of the Baltic countries. Kaliningrad's neighbors are setting up additional fortifications on the border with the Russian exclave.
You can never feel absolutely safe living in this part of the world because we have this neighbor.
And that neighbor's aggression. In 2014, Russia illegally annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. And launched a full-scale invasion of the country in 2022. Russia has long claimed that NATO's expansion is a threat.
НАТО, блок НАТО, страна НАТО в НАТО.
Putin even used it as a justification for invading Ukraine. Ironically, the result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine was more NATO expansion.
That's why we're making the decisions to joining NATO.
Sweden should join NATO.
Finland and Sweden joined the military alliance, and that has shifted the balance around Kaliningrad. First of all, the two countries have now officially added their already robust forces and capabilities to NATO's. Second of all, look at what that means for Kaliningrad in the Baltic Sea. Sweden's Gotland Island is now NATO territory. When you add the territorial waters of all the NATO members, you can see that Russia has less room to maneuver out of Kaliningrad now.
So, I mean, this is Lake NATO.
And Russia's war in Ukraine may have reduced Kaliningrad's military significance for now.
It has decreased since Russia put all its military effort into destroying Ukraine. Now the shoe is on the other foot. The Russian army is in Ukraine, and with both Sweden and Finland inside NATO, we own the Baltic.
Still, the area around Kaliningrad is vulnerable for NATO, and for Kaliningrad's neighbors, that remains a concern. But Russia seems to be shifting its strategy. Remember those flights we looked at earlier? The ones that had to turn around because of GPS jamming? European countries say that's part of a Russian campaign to destabilize the West, and it's likely coming from Kaliningrad.
They still have the Baltic Jammer inside Kaliningrad that keeps jamming civilian airline traffic. To date, no disasters have happened, but it's been close on a number of occasions.
Kaliningrad is indeed being used by Russia as a tool of intimidation since 2014 to rehearse, to train, to exercise various types of warfare, including non-conventional or non-linear operations against their adversaries in the West.
Russian planes have been approaching or flying into NATO airspace over the Baltic Sea, with their transponders turned off, so they don't appear on radar, and that means they could easily collide with other aircraft. And they're usually flying to and from Kaliningrad, probably using air bases like the ones we saw. That means NATO has crews and aircraft on standby to scramble and meet the potential threat. NATO had around 300 of those intercepts in 2024 alone, most of them over the Baltic Sea. And under the sea, Europe's critical infrastructure, such as internet cables, has been damaged. That's allegedly linked to Russia as well. NATO countries have stepped up patrols in response.
The main reason, obviously, is that the Baltic Sea is becoming a real mess now between Russian hybrid operations and ambitions from NATO to push back.
So will Kaliningrad continue to be a source for tension?
In many ways, Kaliningrad should be viewed as a mirror, as something that exemplifies, something that shows the actual state of political, economic, cultural ties between Russia and the West.
A lot is shifting in those ties and in geopolitics right now. So if Kaliningrad holds up a mirror to all that, we should definitely keep our eyes on it.